I know that Erik advertised this as a humorous occasion, but I have to tell you that it's only part 2 that aspires to be humorous. Part 1 is a philosophical lecture. I suppose some people are laughing because they doubt the contrast between philosophy and humor. And indeed, there are some quite funny philosophical jokes around, most of which were made up by one philosopher, namely Sidney Morgenbesser of Columbia University. For example, there's Sidney Morgenbesser's reply to an extremely deep question asked by one of the most distinguished Nazi philosophers of the 20th century, that is Martin Heidegger. Heidegger begins his book, Was ist die, das, or der? I don't remember. I don't dare to get the right article here because I'm not sure which is which. But anyway, he begins this book, What is Metaphysics, with the question, which is very challenging: why is there something rather than nothing at all? And Morgenbesser imagines an exchange between Heidegger and Morgenbesser, which Heidegger begins by saying, why is there something rather than nothing at all? And Morgenbesser replies, so if there was nothing, you'd still complain. Anyway, that's... Morgenbesser is also the inventor of the first law of Jewish logic. If P, why not Q? However, those are, of course, little inventions on Morgenbesser's part. Here's a true story, which I suppose could be cited by those among you who, as I say, challenge the distinction that I drew at the outset, indeed in the very first sentence of this presentation, between philosophy and humor. This is a true story. It occurred at a meeting of the American Philosophical Association about 25 years ago. It was a plenary session, and someone sympathetic to continental philosophy was giving his exposition, his understanding of the meaning of hermeneutics. And it was a partly restless, resisting audience because they didn't know what he was talking about. And he scratched his head after a while when he saw that their faces were full of perplexity and lack of sympathy. And he said, you know, for a long time, for many years, we've been talking about the hermeneutic cycle. And people look at us like you're looking at me now, and they're puzzled. And I used to be quite happy with the phrase hermeneutic cycle, but I'm getting a little tired of it myself. I'm getting a little bit worried about it. I can see that it's a bit puzzling. So from now on, I'm not going to talk about the hermeneutic cycle. I'm going to talk about the hermeneutics spiral. And there's a little guy at the back of the room shouts out, now I get it. Anyway. So you can see that it would be possible for a person like myself, who's a professional philosopher, to get tired of philosophy from time to time and to want to step out of his accustomed role by attempting, as I suggested, a degree of humor. But I have to vindicate my credentials as a philosopher first, and that's the function of the first half of this presentation, which will be a philosophical lecture. This idea of stepping out of one's role is quite a familiar one. It's very important. It's very therapeutic for people. Well, for example, even not only philosophers like to step out of their roles, but certain Roman Catholic priests. I suppose you don't know the story. I suppose you don't know the story about the Roman Catholic priest who was absolutely fed up to here with the same liturgy week in, week out. So one Sunday morning, in the middle of his incantations, all of a sudden, he begins to sing, I'm a Roman Catholic priest, and I make $32,000 a year. And the congregation is astonished and astounded. They don't know what to do, but it's a well-trained congregation, so they all join in, right? He is a Roman Catholic priest, and he makes $32,000 a year. The curate figures that he's a curate. There's nothing for it but to fall in with the new liturgy, the new whatever. So he says, I am a Roman Catholic curate, and I make $19,000 a year. And now the congregation is in the swing of it. He is a Roman Catholic curate, and he makes $19,000 a year. The organist up in the loft isn't quite sure what to do, but to be on the safe side, he does his bit. I am a Roman Catholic organist, and I make $65,000 a year. And the whole congregation joins in. There's no business like show business, like no business, you know. But however, the difficulty is, I had to check out this business of whether I could tell jokes like that with Erik, and he said that I could indeed tell a joke about Roman Catholicism and Roman Catholic priests and churches and stuff like that, provided I followed it with one about a synagogue. So here goes.